are you?
Very good. And you?
Good, good, good.
It looks warm in Hong Kong.
It's very warm. It's like 28 degrees.
Almost like here, but we don't
Is
have
it
the sea.
warm?
Yeah, it's full sunshine, and it
And
rained a lot.
how many days advance are the vineyards again? You mentioned
More than 2 weeks.
more than
It's the
two
earliest
weeks.
from like the past 40 years,
Even '03.
even 03. But 03 got early in the middle of the season, not
Right,
from the
right,
beginning.
right.
So this is the
Okay.
earliest from the beginning. But maybe after we're gonna get some cold and it's gonna delay it. But it's not forecasted for the moment.
I just talked to someone in Bordeaux an hour ago, and they said they're 14 days or 15 days ahead. So same as you guys.
It's quite crazy everywhere almost. In Italy as well. I think you had some friends in Piedmont, and I think it is the same there. So
Mm. Okay, maybe we wait for another minute before we start the tasting. Are you going to join us with some bottles, or you're just doing it from memory?
no, I don't, because just after I go straight back to the vineyards and with the warmth, I don't want to take
Okay.
much risk.
Okay. All
But
right.
I've tested a big part of the what we're going to taste today this weekend.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've done my homework.
Good. 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 Okay. Well, why don't we start?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone in Hong Kong, and good afternoon for those who are in France or maybe in Europe. We're delighted to have Charles-Lachaux with us today from Charles-Lachaux, his own label, as well as Domaine Arnoux-Lachaux, which we'll taste a bit later. So how should we start? Charles, maybe you tell us a bit about the history of the Domaine, and then we move on to the négoce, and then we start tasting the négoce.
Okay. Pleasure. So the estate is now called Domaine Arnoux-Lachaux, as you know it. It exists since 1858, and I'm the sixth generation now working on the family thing. The name changed in 2007. Before it was called Robert Arnoux, who happens to be my grandfather. But he passed away in '94, and my parents were managing the estate here, like those ones. Well done, Paolo. From the mid '80s, and the estate got a bit more famous under the management, so they moved the name to Arnoux-Lachaux. They mixed the last name of my mother, who was the family owning the estate, and the name of my father, who was managing as well with her. And since now this winter, my dad left, and I'm taking care of the domain now with my mother. She does all the administrative stuff as well as supporting me when I take care of the technical thing about the vineyards and the cellar, and we see the commercialization together. And
Okay.
this is it. We have about 14 hectares on 15 appellations. Only reds. We have one vineyard of white, which is the Aligote. We'll talk about it later. But 14.5 hectares of reds on 15 appellations. We have vineyards in Chambolle, Musigny, Vosne, Romanee, Nuits, and one appellation in Chambertin. So
How
this is the
much has
process.
it changed since the beginning? The last century, or how much of the vineyard holdings changed?
A lot. Like many, the estates were way smaller before, except the big names like Gros, de Villennes family, this kind of big old families. So we had a little bit of land, and it's more with one or two weddings. And the generation of my grandfather, they acquired a lot of land, like the Romanee Saint-Vivant. And so did the generation of my parents. My parents bought all the Chambolle Musigny we have now. We didn't add any before. They bought the Latricière. Now it gets harder to get some vineyard because of the price. It's quite tough. We were able to buy the Échezeaux. Almost all the Échezeaux we farm was from family members, and 2 years ago we've been able to buy 2/3 of it. So we almost owning everything we farm on, but it's hard to expand.
Mm. But the biggest part of the vineyards that you own are Nuits and Georges. Is that correct?
Uh,
Combined,
no,
would
it
you
would
say?
be Vosne.
It will still be Romanee. Okay.
In the Bourgogne is about 3 hectares, which is split between Nuits Saint-Georges, Romanee, Chambolle, Musigny. So
Mm.
on Nuits Saint-Georges with the Bourgogne, the villages, and the Premier Cru, we have about 4 hectares, and
Mm.
Romanee is a bit more. After, it depends if you include as well the Échezeaux in the Romanee area or not.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, the smallest, if we can say, is Chambolle.
Mm.
But one appellation represents 2 hectares, and we have 1 hectare of Bourgogne there. So Chambolle is 3 hectares. Vosne is almost 5, if you take Échezeaux in it. The Nuits area 4 hectares, and we have half an hectare in Gevrey.
Okay.
So 5.5 in Vosne, if you take the Aligote as well, which are in Vosne normally.
So
Almost 5 in
total
Vosne.
is now around what, 14, 15 in total?
Exactly 14.
Exactly 14.
14.02 to be precise.
Okay. And let's go to the thanks for that. But let's go to the new label, which we have showing on the screen now. What made you
The
start
new
that? Why did you do it? And of course, this is family vineyards, but why did you decide to not do it under the Domaine, but under a new label?
and we have to be careful because we have a new label on the Domaine this year. So this is a different label, but different business. You see all
Different
the labels
business.
in
Sorry,
18 at the Domaine.
18. Yeah, correct.
So I created the Arnoux-Lachaux thing in 2018. The thing is that it was because of this special plot and wine, the Aligote. We always owned that plot, but because Aligote was not trendy anymore, it's something we were still working, farming, but we were selling all the crop to some negociant because Aligote was not trendy until recently. And because of the Aligote sous Châtelet from Domaine de Vosne, which I tested several times, I was like, I have the plot. It's in good shape with good massal. Even if we sold the grapes, we always did the same work than the rest of the vineyard. So I was like, why not to try? But I didn't want it to overshade or to make a mistake and break what I was trying to create on the Domaine because of this Aligote. That's why I created the Nega. Because it was the first time I was going to produce a white. So if I missed, I didn't want it to ruin what I tried to build on the So this is how Arnoux-Lachaux Négoce is born. And the label has been designed by my wife as well.
It's beautiful. People love it. I mean, the packaging and everything is amazing. But of course, the most important thing is the wine inside. I mean, this Aligote is a great surprise, because people talk about Aligote. Of course, now it's becoming trendy again, and then you have some reference points. But I mean, this is one of the most impressive Aligote I've tried. And as I told you, I always have one in the fridge, even though it's not always ready, especially when you pour it out of a Coravin, there's not enough time to breathe. But I mean, it's pretty amazing how this level of quality that you can achieve. What's the age of the vines?
It's quite recent. 3/4 of the vineyard are 30 years old, and 1/4 or a bit less than 1/4 is 60, 70. But the thing is that even if Aligote is trendy nowadays, because it's an appellation where the laws allows you to produce a lot, and Aligote is quite a generous varietal, even a lot of people who do work well still produce a lot. So even if it's better than before, because of the climate change, the viticultural practices, in my opinion, the Aligotes in general, too often they stay a bit too tight and too acid, when this is really about the farming as well. Since I took it for me, we did the no trimming thing here. We aim for a small crop. So 18 was the first vintage. 18 in the white is huge. Even the people who are with the yields, when they target 50, they produce like 65. So the
Wow.
Aligote, we have the right to produce 72, and I was aiming for 35. And I produced 40 hectoliters per hectare of Aligote. And the no trimming makes it with less juice, more pulp, more flesh in the berry. And I wait to pick it for it to really get ripe when the grapes are turning pink or gold. And it's pressed 100% all cluster and fermented in barrel, alcoholic fermentation with no sulfur. It's made in a old school way, like if it would be, I don't know, my bata or my moache. I don't care if it's aligote or not. It needs the right thing to show what it has in the belly.
Mm. No, I mean it's impressive and you know congratulations on this first vintage. You know I look forward to tasting the 1919 later this year. But I mean this is one of the first wines that people jump onto when we show them the range because everybody is looking forward to trying your white. You know they you know after a few years people understand your style of red even though it continues to improve and evolve. But I mean, people were very pleasantly surprised with this white. So congrats.
Thank you.
So
And
now talk a little bit about the reds also, even though we're not tasting it tonight. So so you have a Pommard, you have a Vosne, you have a Gevrey. Why those appellations? And do you know will you continue to
one.
explore? Ah, that's right, and Bourgogne. So will you continue to expand that range, or you're happy with what you have?
So yes and no. The thing is that at the beginning I wanted to produce only the Aligote because no trimming at 1 meter 60. It's in goblet. It's tiny berries, but it's huge. It's 1 hectare, so I have 14 barrels.
Right.
And I was able to find some Nuits premier cru au Boudot and
Oh,
Romanee premier
nice.
cru les Suchots.
Oh, yes, yes, you mentioned that. So that would
Next
be
door,
a nice comparison.
yeah.
So
And
all these plots are organic. I mean, this is one sort of requirement that you need, right?
yes, and I asked the people extra works. I won't ask them to work like we do at the estate, but I want something to be close. Whereas I wouldn't put my name on the label. It needs to have a
Mm,
certain quality for me to be able to put the name. It will be more easy to buy agents for crops and try to buy Grand Crus. There are still some to sell for negotiations, but they are not the quality I would like to buy in terms of grapes. So I prefer to stick to more humble appellations. If I
yeah.
have good opportunity like the Boudot or Suchot, I will do it. but 19 will be like my maximum production. 19, I will produce about 10,000 bottles on the négoce, all mixed together, and I don't want more than that. Whereas I won't have enough time to take well care of it. And the négoce is something on the side of the domain. The domain is really the important thing. So the négoce doesn't have to take me too much time away from the domain.
And 10,000 bottles is just about the right amount you can produce within your own cellar as well. Or you can actually grow.
If I don't want to move. But the thing is that I'm producing less and less of in the domain. So I could take that space.
That's not good news. That's not good news. No, don't produce less.
You know why.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, anything more you want to talk about the négoce?
I think it says pretty much it. It's vinified exactly like the estate. Like this, the people can compare. The difference is made only by the farming. So it's no sulfur winemaking process, and the red and the white is 100% all cluster, all batch. All in oak, used oak, no new oak at all.
No new oak. And do you use the same barrels from the Domaine, or you had to buy new barrels, new old barrels?
I had to buy some for the white because we didn't add any. But for the reds, I use the used barrels of the Domaine, which I'm about to sell. I buy some on my négoce.
I see that we have a question. What are your thoughts about reduction in reds? And by the way, please, we have quite a few customers who bought the set, so please feel free to ask questions if we didn't cover it. So what are your thoughts about reductions in reds, please, Charles?
In whites.
In whites, yes.
It's complicated one. It can come from various stuff. Sulfites are a big reason for reduction. It could be the oak or the lees. But I try not to work on the reductive style. That's why I put no sulfur in winemaking for the négoce. There's see some after malo. But as you said, the label of the négoce is quite fragrant and light and accessible, and because they have to show what is in the bottle. I want the négoce wines to be really easy and enjoyable for the people. So I don't want to make this reductive style, which is not trendy in Burgundy, in reds and whites. It's not really my thing.
Right. And what are the flowers actually on those labels?
It's rosy.
And rosy. For the other ones, I can't remember. Are they all roses?
The red, it's roses as well, but they're pink.
Okay.
And it's because you have plenty. We had plenty the vineyards in the past, and for me, all cluster wines with a bit of age, they smell rose. And the last thing is we had a daughter in 17, which is called rose. So it was a good combination of all those components.
Okay, brilliant. Another question. How many times did you use the barrel before you no longer use?
There is no really rule. I'll start to use them longer and longer. I still have some barrels of 2013 in the cellar. So it's really on the feeling, how they smell, how they look inside. There's no really rule. It really depends.
Okay, great. Okay, so if there are no further questions on the négoce, let's move on to the youngest reds. We'll start with the Chambolle Musigny. You mentioned that this is a vineyard that your parents bought, and it's quite big. It's what, close to 2, you mentioned?
It's about 8 vineyards, and it's almost 2 hectares now.
Almost 2 hectares, okay. So tell us more about it, please.
So it's 8 vineyards which are spread along the slope. It's top of the slope villages vineyards. When you look at the Chambolle village, it's on the upper part. It goes from the forest until the village, the way down the slope. And it's a very cool place in Chambolle because it's facing north. It's facing Dijon. So when it snows, for example, nowadays in Burgundy, the snow is not thick. It melts on the coast within the 3-4 hours. in those vineyards, it can stay for 2 or 3 days because it's on the shade and it's always windy. So it enhances the cool and quite focused character of Chambolle Musigny. And it's mostly old vineyards. They're about 50 years old. 60, there is only one young vine, which is now 20 years old. And all the rest is about 60, 70 years old. So it's quite small production for the 2 hectares. We produced in 15 barrels. So it
For
would
2
be
hectares.
like 4,500 bottles. If we would do the crop, the legal crop, we have the right to produce on 2 hectares 100 hectoliters. So it would be, we have the right to produce 13,000 bottles. So we do a third of what we have the right to do.
Just for the quality, of course.
Yes, for the quality and the health of the vines.
Right. Okay, tell us a bit about the 16 vintage.
It was
16, right.
quite a tough one. We produced about the same amount that we produced in 19 because it got frosted. And those cool places got even more frosted because they kept the humidity. So the yields there were down by 65%. We had the luck that after the frost, some buds regrew. We didn't carry any berry, so they didn't increase the crop, but they were there to help us prune the year after and not uproot the whole vineyard. So because of the frost, it has delayed all the cycle. And in the recent vintages, it's one of the latest vintages we harvested because it took more time to the grapes to get ripe. And because of frost, it was very challenging in summer because what was not frosted and was left was very affected by the frost and was very sensible to oidium and mostly mildew. There was mildew already on the branches as well as on the grapes. So it kept taking down the average crop on the vintage. But at the end, what remained in 16 is very precise and cool. It's still a bit young. I think it's a very classic style of Burgundy vintage. It needs to breathe a bit to show its character, but it has a wonderful future in my opinion. It's really the stuff I want to keep in my cellar for a few years.
Oh, there is a question. How many years do you recommend to conserve your wines before you open them? That's very broad. I mean, I guess it depends on which wine. But let's start with the Chambolle. Out of the village that you have, which one would you open first? Would it be the Chambolle?
It depends what you're looking for. At the moment, I opened a lot of Chambolle 17 because of it. You will see they've been shipped yesterday, so you might receive them in a few weeks.
Okay.
It depends on the vintage. The vintage like 60, hello Sonia, I would put them on the side. A vintage like 17 is already approachable. As well, like 15 and a village, I would start from 3 years, but it would be even better after 10, 15 years. People are scared about to wait even for Bourgogne. When it has a good body and depth, it's tremendous a village with 20, 25 years. But of course, you need to be able to pop some corks sometimes. So I would recommend to buy a few and open a few and keep the rest for later.
Okay,
but yeah, 2-3 years is great.
So it depends on the year, and I mean, of course, sometimes the wine closed down. Do you expect the 16s to close down?
I think they did. I think they're starting to reopen again, slowly. More the villages, I think the Premier Crus and Grand Crus are still a bit tight. But not all the vintages are closing down. I think they reflect what they encountered during the growing season. They had a big stress, and I think it's the same a bit in Bordeaux. They need to take some time for themselves before to recover.
And where was it hit worse? Was it it was in Chambolle, right? That was by the frost.
Chambolle was the worst. Yeah, it was the smallest.
And Vosne was somewhat safe, right? I remember.
Yeah, it depended a lot on the areas. What was funny is that what is supposed to be frosting area didn't got frosted, and the ones which are supposed to be safe got frosted. And in
Okay.
the same vineyard, sometimes at the same age, one vine was frosted, the one next to it wasn't. And sometimes on one, the top buds were frosted, not the bottom, and the next one, it was the opposite. It was incomprehensible for everybody.
Yeah, because I mean, some of your colleagues had the entire vineyard frosted, and they couldn't produce anything, which was, of course, very difficult for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about 16 or Chambolle Musigny? Please shout. I'll get my Nuits Saint-Georges from 15 ready. So let's move on and please tell us about this Nuits Saint-Georges vineyard. How many parcels? How many age? And what's the age and all that?
It's about the same as the Chambolle. It's 8 vineyards as well. It's almost as big. It's 1 hectare 0.7. So there are 5 key vineyards in this one, which are just between Vosne and Nuits, in the lieux-dits Lavière and Bas-de-Combe, which is quite often used by other producers to put on the label, because it's the borders of Vosne, and it has a lot of limestone. It's not too much about clay like sometimes Nuits can be. It makes more elegant wines. And those 5 vineyards are quite old. They're about 70 years old. So the production is more than tiny, but it gives a big concentration and body to the cuvée. When we have 3 others, 2 are not far, but on a more flat area at the beginning of Nuits Saint-Georges, which is called Saint-Jacques. And one is on the south side of Nuits Saint-Georges, in the part called Les Brûlés, but it's not a premier cru, and small vineyard. Those 8 vineyards make the blend of Nuits Saint-Georges. So the last 3 bring more the volume, the easiness of the cuvée, when the first 5 ones gives it their seriousness and complexity. But the aim is not to produce the tannic Nuits Saint-Georges we have in mind. It's a controversial application. Too many people think Nuits Saint-Georges is tannic and hard. Because again, if you look to produce the 50 hectoliters per hectare, with the clay, the grapes can get quite big. So if you want body, you need to extract. And if you extract for colors and aromas, you extract tannins as well. And in Nuits, they can be a lot. So with our practices, the aim to have this crop down is to extract well less, because we have smaller quantity. So that, like this, you don't extract tannins as well, and you keep softer wines, like the old school Nuits, not from the 80s and 90s, but what was done in the past. Burgundy was one of the most famous places in Burgundy. It's like Centenay. What is more under the radar now was the most famous appellations at the time, when the farming was not the same. And people is very generous.
So at what point do you blend those 8 parcels? Only at the very end?
No, from the picking. We put everything in the same tank for the vinification.
Okay.
I believe that if you blend the late, it can still at some point dissociated. When having the grapes together and make them ferment together, for me, you erase this kind of differences. It's all mixed from the very beginning. So I believe it's more homogeneous.
So there was no temptation to, vinify them separately and perhaps one day do some lieu-dit bottlings?
No, the thing is that if I start to do the brûlé, my grandfather used to do the brûlé on the side, because it was as well. If we do the brûlé on the side and the lavière on the side, the people will crave more for these 2 cuvées, and they won't be much interested about the Nuits with the 2 more flat vineyards. And the wine might maybe lack a bit of complexity. When we have the luck to have another lieu-dit in Nuits Saint-Georges as well, which is called Poiset. And the thing is that we already have 15 appellations. If we start to make lieu-dit everywhere, it would be really interesting. We will end up with 20, 22 appellations on the portfolio. So after, how do I say to my importer, for example, in the US, you can have this Chambolle classic, but not this lieu-dit. But in Hong Kong, you have 30 bottles, and you have 18, and you have none. It's already complicated enough, the allocations.
No, you can just send everything to Hong Kong. It's not a problem. That will solve your
Everything ends
problem
up,
because
don't forget that one.
it's a no for everybody else. Um, okay, there's a question. What do you think about no trimming of the vines? Is there any impact on the wines? I think they want to know a little bit about your vineyard works.
Yes, there's a big impact. That's why now we do it on 100% because no trimming takes down the yield, helps the root of the vine go way further in the soil, so they resist to more hydric stress, and they feed with finer mineral elements, so it makes more precise and defined wine, in my opinion. That's why we've chosen to not trim everything, but it's a big job. When all the vineyard job is done, like for many of the domains, when they've done all the palissage work, for us the tressage is 200 hours per hectare of extra work.
200
So
hours. Wow.
per hectare. So we have
Per
14
hectare.
hectares. Yeah.
And how many people do you have now in the vineyards normally?
Since yesterday, we have our seasonal workers. So this afternoon, as I'm not with them, they are 21. When I'm there, we are 22 in the vineyards until end
Okay.
of July.
Okay.
And
So,
if
oh,
we,
so people are free to travel now. Or are they
it's local
from
people.
local?
It's
Okay.
local people.
Okay.
And if we would work classically, like trimming with tractor, we would need to be 8 to take care of the 14 hectares. So with
Mm.
almost last year we were 28. So
And
we'll see.
from 2012 until today, I mean, have you done more and more things, manually?
Yes, we have less and less mechanization of anything. It's really, if we can say tailor-made, we try to do the same practice to all the vine and all the vineyards. But the thing is, they like you and me. We require the same care, but not necessarily at the same time. So the aim to be many as well is to go faster on the vineyards, to pass really several and several times, to be able to do the right care to the vines at the right time. And that's what it's something you can do with mechanization. The same thing is done for everything at the same time. Like for the trimming, when the people trim with a tractor, the one which is at 2 meter and the one at 1 meter 10, if you trim at 1 meter 10, it will be cut. For us, before to roll, we wait for them to be really tall. What is not tall enough, we'll wait the second time we come over. It's really
Mm,
from time to time.
mm. Okay. There was another question. How was the 18 in Nuits Saint-Georges?
What do you mean?
18 vintage in Nuits
Ah,
Saint-Georges.
it was great because it's the first year we've been able to do the no trimming on the Nuits village wines. So I think they get even more intensity and flesh, and they move to 100% all cluster, which gives them more freshness and spices. But I've not retested the Nuits Saint-Georges a lot since they are bottled. We bottled everything in January, and I've tasted once since. But it was one of the biggest surprise in the tasting, like Procès or Clos Vougeot, because those under the radar appellation, they really change and evolve very fast with all those changes in the vineyards. The lesser known can make very big improvements, so this is really interesting for us.
Mm. And in 15, what was the whole cluster treatment?
In the Nuits village, it was about 50% at the time.
Okay. And you've gradually increased in 16, 17?
Yes, 17 was almost 800%. It was maybe 80, something like this. And
Mm.
now everything is 100%. Thanks to our practices in the vineyard, we have a certain quality of grapes which allows us to do the 100% all cluster.
And if it allows, you continue to keep it at, 100% whole cluster.
Yeah, but it's really decided by feeling during the harvest, depending on how the grapes looks and taste. Some vineyards you
Mm.
already do an idea from the growing season. As we go into every vineyard, maybe 12, 13 times during summer, you know what the grapes look like. So some you have an idea already, like Saint-Vivant-Chou, I know the whole vineyard is going generally. But in the villages, sometimes you have a part of the vineyard where some vines are more productive, some lesser. So it took some more time for everything to get well in the same direction with our viticulture changes. But now we're quite into it since mostly 18. 17 started, but 18 is homogeneous.
Okay. Well, in terms of wine, I mean, the 15 Nuits Saint-Georges is definitely a bit more structured and muscular comparing to the 16 Chambolle. You think it's the vineyard or is it the year or a combination of both?
I would say both, because 15 was very sunny vintage, very generous. So the wines are accessible, but because it was more sunny, the grapes made a thicker skin to resist against the sun. And the thicker is the skin, the more you have tannins as well. But that's why the 15s are very enjoyable, but they build for the long term as well if you want, because they have this structure and this body to be able to age for a long time if you need so.
And would you drink your 16s before the 15s in general?
No, because I think as a Pinot lover, I will prefer the 16 style on the long term than the 15. 15 is nice, but maybe it lacks a bit this special freshness we love so much about Pinot. We'll see in a few years' time. Maybe I'm wrong. And I think we're gonna have big surprises with 15. But in general, the vintage is for me more interesting in 16, and it will be more rare. There are less.
Sure. And would you how would you compare this duo to say 09 and 10? I mean, is there a bit of similarity? Because 09, it was such a ripe vintage and it produced wines that are quite, quite easy and not so Pinot, at least in the beginning. And some of them, of course, are providing some good surprises. Whereas the 10s are definitely a bit more structured. It's more Pinot and there's more finesse. That's what some of the Burgundy lovers say. How would you compare these two compared to the 09s and 10s?
I would say it's a good way of compare them. In the different order, it's about the same thing. Yeah, it's really these two kind of balance. More the fleshy, sexy one, and the more shy one, which is more on the length.
Okay. There was a question about tasting wines at your domains. Okay. Do you agree that if I taste your wine at the domain, the wine will taste different in other countries, even though I hand carry by myself? So I think they're talking about condition as well. But let's say if they're in perfect condition, how would the wines differ after traveling and not traveling?
With traveling, they evolve a little bit more. When it's on the young stage like this, I love when we travel to taste the wines. I often prefer them at home because it's different. We are not in the same condition. For you people who come, people prefer to taste at the Domaine because they are at the place where wines are produced. When very often for producers, we like to taste them abroad because when we are in our place, we are in our habits and everything. To be in a different atmosphere helps to have maybe a more objective tasting. But yeah, I think it will be slightly more evolved, but not evolved in the bad way. For young wines like this, it's more you win a little bit of time with a travel. And
even with close distance like London or Switzerland or Germany, does it evolve a little bit quicker?
Maybe not when you take road for like Germany or Switzerland, but more when you start to go way further, like England, because generally they take the boat or a big truck for a longer time. Yes, I think it does change a bit. Above the 4 hours drive, I think it starts to change. Before it's hard to notice. Under 4 hours drive, I think it's hard to notice.
Interesting. And I think the way the wines are served in Asia also makes a difference because I mean now we're springtime, and outside is 28 degrees during the day. It may be 23 at night now, but the way you treat the wines are so important because, I mean, if you don't, have it a little bit cooler, then the wine tastes completely different, especially for vintages like 15. And if you taste, wines that are a bit more rich at a high temperature, it really affects the wine. And in Hong Kong, room temperature would be something like, 21, 22. People like to have their aircon on. And even though the wine leaves the fridge at 15 or 14 degrees, and there's a big gap between that and 22. And it really affects the whole texture, the feel, the taste, and even the aromas of the wine.
Yeah, completely. I think you should start to have drinking rooms, like a cellar when you stay at the drink.
Like your cigar room.
Yeah. But I completely agree. It's the same for us in summer. At the moment, it's okay. But when it's 30 outside and you take a bottle from the cellar, when it gets warmer, it's not the same thing. And our perception is not the same as well. I think it changes a lot on the wine, but on us as well. So which is two big components.
Okay. All right. I'm getting good at using my Coravin. I wasn't so good before. But anyway, so here we are, the Romanee 14. Please tell us about this lovely wine.
So this one is a mix of 3 different vineyards. So I would say Chambolle is really the part where you have very light soils, limestones, which always makes ethereal wines, the feminine wines that people are talking about. Nuits, more south, is more clay, darker, it makes more fleshy wines. And for me, Vosne is the in-between, the mix. That's why I think it has so much reputation, is magic. You have this good mix of clay and limestone, which gives them a good body with a certain fragrance and spiciness. And the Vosne is a mix of 3 vineyards for this one. It's really classic vineyards as they are in the middle of the village, in the middle of the houses. We have 3 lieux-dits, which are au commune. So it's the city hall, close to the city hall. We have au sol, which is next to the old Jaillet house, and one just above, which is called Les Bossières. And Bossières is very small. Commune is 70% of the cuvée, the sol is 20%, and the Bossières is 10%. But they're all very close by. It's 200 meters between Commune and Sol, and Bossières is 20 meters from Sol. So it's really very kind of similar soils, and vegetal as well.
And the age of the vines?
It's about 50 years old there. The Bossières is quite old. It's about 70 years old, but Commune and Sol are a bit younger. They are about 45, 50 years old now. We have the luck on the estates in general, the year is about 50. My parents never uprooted a whole vineyard to replant. They do repiquage from year to year. So it allows to have quite a good average age, quite advanced.
Is that your plan as well?
We do.
To do, okay.
Yeah,
instead of yeah, okay, good. And tell us a bit about the 14 vintage.
14 was a nice vintage. The wines are quite round now to taste, quite easy. It's not the ones I would put on the side for 15, 20 years. I think 15, 16 are more interesting. This one is more pleasurable. And it was quite a humid vintage. The berries got round, and we got a big problem in the vineyards. We got the Suzuki Drosophila, which picked some berries and turned some grapes to vinegar. So we had to be very careful with salting. That's why sometimes...
Sorry, what's it called again? Suzuki?
Suzuki Drosophila, it's a fly. Suzuki fly. It's an Asian fly.
Good, okay.
And that's why we have sometimes some 14, which can have a high volatile because of that. For example, if you put in the tank one berry, which was eaten by this insect, to compensate, to balance, you need like 12 to 14 healthy grapes. So places where you don't have sorting tables or the people are less careful in the vineyard for sorting, it made a big difference on the wine sometimes. So it was very long to harvest in 14 because of that. You really had to check at the grapes, turn them in your hand before to put it in the bucket to check no berry was rotten. Quite round and pleasurable vintage. Quite easy. It's an easy one. We said, what would you open your village? I think you see the 14, they start to have 5, 6 years. It's a generous vintage. They are in the great window for drinking, in my opinion. Even
Yeah,
the
I had your Chambolle village a few weeks ago, and it was beautiful. I mean, that for me was almost I mean, not quite at its peak, but at least it's closer to its peak. But this is a good surprise because I haven't had this for a long time, and the Vosne 14 is great. I mean, for those who are tasting it together. Quick question: 13 or 14? What do you like, Charles?
I love 13 for the same reason than 15, 16. I think 13 is like 2010. It's the latest vintage for harvest we had in recent history. We picked in October. It was more than 100 days between flowering and harvest. I often compare it to low temperature cooking, you know. It took the grapes a very long time to get ripe. So you have this raw sensation into the wine, but it's really accomplished. And I love this vintage. I think it's really good classic for Burgundy. And 14 is more to drink now. And 13 is to put on the side to let age, like 16, in my opinion.
I talked to Jeremy says 2 weeks ago, and I said, you know, sometimes I think about 13 being a bit similar to '08. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, could be, but I think '08 got more tannic structure than 13. On what I tasted, I was not working in wine at the time yet, so and it's not a vintage you taste so often. '08. I think they drank it quite early when they received it, or they put it far in the cellar. How often do you drink an '08 Burgundy? Not so often, I think.
I drink a lot of '07s, but you know, which are all very lovely now, even at the, you know, Grand Cru and top level. '08, yeah, much more rare. You're right.
'08, '07 is very good for drinking at the moment, even in whites. The whites
Yeah.
in '08 are tremendous.
Mm.
'08, '07, sorry. '08 is, they start to open up. It was really tight. I don't open any quite often. I think a few months ago I opened the Clos Vougeot, which was really surprising, really open for what you would thought with the vintage and the appellation. But it took a long time to come. You see, almost 10 years.
Okay. There was another question. Regnault, no, we don't want to talk about that wine. It doesn't exist anymore. It says that people say it's impossible to find in the US. Yeah, it's right. And it will never be, you know, it will never become available. Everything will go to Hong Kong.
It would be impossible to find everywhere, as we produce so little. The thing is that I worked with this appellation to make the changes from the very beginning. So there's a lot of noise around it, and the plot is well located, so it helps as well. But we produce 2 barrels per year maximum.
It's 0.2, right? Is it 0.2 or
0.18?
0.18 exactly.
0.1853 to be precise.
Yeah. So we don't talk about that wine.
Yeah, and for me,
even though this will be my dinner wine tonight.
Regnault 99.
Yes.
Nice. We had it a few months ago because it's the birthday of one of my brothers, so we have a few. And I love
Max? Not Max.
Yeah, Max 99.
Max.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So, and this is the appellation is so nice that we keep some as well for us. and to open up sometimes when we will travel in the future. So after you have 1.5 barrels to sell worldwide, 400 bottles. That's why it's impossible to find.
Okay, another question. What vineyards were arched in 18?
So in 18, we did all the Bourgogne, de Nuits Village, Vosne-Romanee, Premier Cru, les Chaumes, La Trissière Chambertin, Saint-Vivant, Suchot, Regnault. So it's a
So
third of
most
the
of it.
a third of the
Oh, a
domain.
third of it. Okay.
We were increasing, but instead of doing only the Grand Crus, I was like, we always do the best thing on our best vineyard. But what needs it the most is the most simple. So I was like, I want to try to do it on the Bourgogne and the Nuits Village and the Chaume. After there was all this Maria process and stuff, but it was too big. And to do it, you really need a team who's really dedicated to do it. And I didn't have so many people like this at the time. So you see, in 19, we had the aim to do 50% of the domain. We did 100.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
it won't go down. It will be 100 every year now.
Because you really see the final result from these arch vines.
Yeah. And this year we have changed all the canopy management because of that. We have increased the post across the 14 hectares. We've replaced everything to be at 1.60 meters. It was supposed to take us 4 to 5 years to change everything. We were told. So we did it in 5 months with the team because they like me, they're quite impatient.
Okay. There's a question about vegetation. I think this gentleman may have joined us later. How is the vegetation so far? Maybe you want to repeat it. Is it faster than before?
It's one of the earliest vintage we had. At the Domaine, the vineyards are close to 7 leaves long. So flowering might be in like 10 days, 2 weeks. So it's pretty fast. I had some friends from the Côte de Beaune on the phone this morning. In the Côte de Beaune, they might start to trim next week already.
Wow.
So it's really early, and it's getting. And we had a lot of rain last weekend and Monday, so a lot of moisture. I know it's really warm. It's 24, 25. So it's humid, and the vineyard is I don't know the English word, a liane, like in the jungle. So she loves humidity. When it's humid and warm, it grows so fast. Sometimes it grows that much per day.
Wow.
So now it's the crazy period.
So, I mean, is that part of the reason why you can achieve this, the height and also the way you want to treat your vineyards because of this, warmer temperature as well and an earlier growing season?
No, it was not because of that. It was really for complexity of the grape, but we can see it as a good impact because of the global warming. We have more shade on the soil, on the next row, so it protects our berries as well. And the funny thing is that 19 was very dry summer. We had a lot of hydric stress. And on the coast, a lot of vineyards turned yellow because there was no more water. The only ones which didn't turn much yellow, and not yellow at all, was the not trimmed ones. Because the roots go way deep because of the not trimming, they resisted to the hydric stress. And because when you don't trim, you don't stress out your vineyard. So they have more balance to fight against a big stress. Nature is well made, huh? So we're just here to try to help her and not act on her. We're accompanied.
Great. Okay. Time flies. We only have a few minutes left. Is there anything else you guys want to ask Shao while we have him? Oh, here's another one. How would you introduce your wines for a guest in a restaurant? What does that mean? How would you introduce your wines for a guest in a restaurant? I mean, maybe the style? What we want to say something about your style of wine? Is that what you want to ask, Pierre?
I think it's what is meaning. I think I would pour it before any food, because now it's what we produce now is the kind of wine you don't necessarily need to pair them. After you try to find something to accompany philosophy style of wines.
Yeah, philosophy.
it's wines which are made to try to give pleasure to the people, because you drink wine because you want to have some fun, some pleasure. You don't drink wine because you are forced to, or not this kind of wine when you do normally. And the philosophy is like try to accompany the nature, and all the wines has to be different because from where they come from, not because of us and because of how we treat them, how we take care of them. That's to be different because they come from different place. That's how I would introduce them, I think. But it's so hard because in the restaurant you get a very small spot to be able to talk about a wine or philosophy to a guest when there is so much to say.
Okay, great. Anything else that you guys want to ask? Well, if not, we don't want to stop Charles from going back to the vineyards and working on his favorite vines. Thank you so much for your time, Charles.
It was a pleasure.
It's been great talking to you, and also guiding us through these four lovely wines. I wish you all the best in this growing season, and hopefully we'll get to see each other soon.
I hope to see you soon. Normally we are having dinner in Burgundy at this time of the year, January.
I know. I can't wait to come back.
Soon.
All
Hi to
right.
the take care and have a good evening. Bye, Paulo.
Okay, say hi to your family.
Bye.
Bye.